Let's go ahead and get started. Oh, a couple more people are joining, but we'll go ahead and get started.
Okay, that's fine. That is fine.
Good afternoon, everybody. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Sarah Velasquez, the Communications Core Director for the K-INBRE. And we have this seminar once a month, normally the first Thursday of the month, but that was didn't work out for us. So we are doing it today, which I'm glad to see y'all here. And please, if you haven't yet, please check out our social media. We have Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and a very nice website you can check out also. Today, I'd like to introduce Patricia. How do you say your last name?
It's Hudgins.
Hudgins. She's the Associate Director at the Career Center at K-State. So I'll just hand it off to you and you can get started.
Yay. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for being here today. We were kind of joking about inclement weather was our last delay. And if you live in Kansas, that could mean a variety of things because of a lot of things that are going on, from high winds to whatever. But if you are in Kansas or close by, you know that we've had spring about 5 or 6 times already. And it's probably not the last time that spring will start over. But anyway, I am excited to be here today and just talk about a few tips and a few things that might be helpful to you as far as networking was the title for today. And I think that what I want to do is, well, you know what? I don't really need to share my screen as much because my first slide is really of K-State, and they may not want to see all my K-State stuff as much, but I can. Let's see, I probably should have done that before I did my little screen thing here. There we go. I should have set it up before I did my little deal. Hold on, let me close this and open again. There I am. And there you guys are. But let me do this, because what I want to do is I'm going to basically share a tip sheet more than anything. And then my first slide is just a little bit of, it's just where I am. And then end it that way. And then my contact information. So let's see if that works. Can you see the K-State piece? No? You can?
Yeah.
There we go. There we go. There we go. I didn't start to share. So this is the building that we're in on campus if you're at K-State, and we encourage you to just, come and see us if you can. One of the things that we do so much and do so well since the pandemic is we will see people on Zoom, and I don't hate it. I think it's kind of wonderful and it's a great outreach. And as we are talking about the subject of networking, sometimes it is way easier to connect to people through Zoom or a different platform, because it gives you an opportunity to not have to travel and to do things just like we're together today, because I didn't have to hop in my car and go somewhere or run across a campus to do something, which I am a fan that it is okay. It really is. And sometimes your best opportunities are something quick that you're going to connect with somebody with, that you may not need people seeing you present always, where you are connecting with people and networking with some people. Because, when you show up in certain spaces and people start to say, oh, are they looking to do a new job? Are they looking to do this? Because you don't need people speculating while you're connecting with the people that you're connecting with. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my last slide, and then let me stop my share real quick. I'll go to my last slide, and then I want to bring up the fact sheet. I'm just going to talk a little bit from a little fact sheet today, and then that way it will work out that when we're done, it'll just have my information on the end of everything. But again, just as Sarah said, we are excited to be here to always reach out and help students in ways that we have found to be successful. Now, I'm gonna stick my hand out and say you can smack my hand because I am not the best person, and this is full disclosure, at keeping my LinkedIn account up to date. But I can tell you how you can get yours going and some great ways to do things. People in my office say, oh my gosh, if you know Pat Hudgins, she knows everybody. And I should probably have invented another social media platform because of the way that I network with people. And my networking is a little bit, I'm not going to say uncanny, but I am a people person and I like to be in spaces with people and I like to be in the room with people. And so when I said, you don't have to be in the same space literally or physically, I still like to be connected to people in many ways. And so what I want to do is I'm going to get my little tip sheet and here, pull my little tip sheet and we're going to go through that. And here's what I want you to do. I want you to feel free to stop me at any point that when we get to certain things and you say, oh, can you explain that a little bit more? Or can we talk a little bit more about that? So give me a second to bring up my other sheet and then we will kind of go through that because it's kind of like, okay, kind of the old fashioned way of doing things a little bit. So one of the things that I want to talk about is the first thing that you really, really want to have is a reason to connect to LinkedIn. And you know what? 7 times people will, if you've got a picture on your LinkedIn, something that's not like your friend's head connected to your other friend's head or something like that, get a professional picture. And if you're connected to K-State for sure, you can get a professional picture done for free. And we offer that for students as well. So keep that in mind. Have a professional picture where it isn't your friend's head connected to yours and you've cut it off. People are more likely, well, they say about 7 times more likely to view your profile if you've got a picture on it versus having it with the blank. So get a professional headshot or do one that's a good one. I'm looking at Victoria's cool picture right there. Great picture, Victoria, that you're sharing of yourself. That is what I would say is a good headshot that's appropriate to share and to make sure that you've got it where you are feeling good about it and you're positive about what you've got. I want you to think in terms of summary. A summary is more of like a quick elevator speech. What can you say about yourself quickly and concisely that then you can connect to your LinkedIn? A lot of times we'll say, hi, my name is so-and-so. You say something about your major or your degrees that you're pursuing, and then your goal as to what it is that you're pursuing with your goal. So think in those terms as well, so that you can just say, so here's a little bit about myself very quickly, because I tell you what, if you think about an elevator speech from the first floor to the second floor, and that's as far and as quick as the ride is going to be, what can you say before the doors open again? And that's how fast you want to talk. And you're thinking about people when we're talking about one-on-one in an elevator with someone. So let me just tell you a couple little stories about one-on-one opportunities. Sometimes we're pretty shy and we don't like to reach out to people. But people get on elevators all the time, and everybody doesn't ride elevators. But when you get on an elevator and it's just you, it's probably a little bit more comfort level to at least speak to the person joining you. Because otherwise you can feel like, who is this? But if you're in a professional setting, it's just fine. I always tell people speak. That's your first big networking connection. Because oftentimes when you're in an elevator, sometimes you're maybe at a hotel or at a conference, as we're getting back into traveling and doing conferences and going places where people are physically in places or spaces. Think about that could be your guest speaker. It could be your keynote speaker. And what if you had a one-on-one with that keynoter who hopped on the elevator with you? Would you just about pinch yourself by saying, gosh, that was who I got on the elevator with? before they did their keynote address. And you could have had 30 seconds of an introduction, perhaps an exchange of a business card with them, or some other contact that nobody else would have had. So always think about that. When you're in places like that at a conference or somewhere at a bigger venue, just say hi, because if it is your speaker, a lot of times people's personalities tend to be very outgoing. And so they're going to speak back to you and kind of ask you a couple questions. So if any of you are, for example, your part-time job might be a server at a restaurant, and you are my server, I am going to find out so much about you. By the time you say, hi, my name is so-and-so, when you come to the table, and at the right time, I'm going to ask some other things about you, because to me, making a connection with people is so important, because one, that person's handling your food, that person's handling your life for just a short period of time. And that server, to me, makes them comfortable with you, and it makes me comfortable with you handling my food when I know a little bit about you. That might be quirky, but making connections to people, I have found many times, especially in Manhattan, finding out that actually just the other day I was eating with a friend, and we asked a couple questions of our server, and they were a K-State student. And then we found out that we knew another sibling of theirs that had come to K-State. So there you go. So then you bring a comfort level to that person. And that comfort level is like, oh my gosh, my younger brother or my younger sister, or my older brother or older sister, or that kind of thing. And so then you feel like they've got a connection. And then people with connections can continue to be connected, and they grow, and the connections grow and grow and grow, just kind of like a chain link. And it grows and grows and grows, and you're connected that way, and you're interlocked in a way that people then have a way to come back to you for help, or for professional advice, or for sharing experiences. Okay, so think about that. If you think about an elevator speech, it helps you to be creative. So be creative. If you've got a quirky personality, or if you're humorous, if you're funny, then let that come out kind of quickly if you can. If not, just be concise, but you don't have to be stiff and so tight about life, because you're trying to make a connection. So being friendly is one of the things that you want to do. And a smile is universal. So smiling at a person getting on an elevator literally is a way to greet them without ever saying a word. But I would always say smile, and at least say hi, because you're in a closed space with somebody really quickly for a few minutes that you may want to find a level of comfort. So then the other thing is, when you do your LinkedIn for quick tips, think about your experience. What kind of experience do you have? List your current and past experience levels of employers or people that you have gotten yourself involved with or connected with. Sometimes experience is not paid experience. So think about that too. It can be volunteer experience. It can be situations where it is community involvement, where you have served on a committee or served in an area just for a short period of time. Maybe someone's asked you to be a part of a search for a position, or maybe you have been asked to be a part of a focus group as students, to give your input, to improve on a policy, to improve on something in the community or in the area of the medical field or something like that, that you may have some expertise on, or you've got a perspective that maybe they want to hear from. We involve our students in the Career Center a lot. For example, we have students who are peer-to-peer career specialists. And so we will utilize those students. As a matter of fact, right now, we've utilized them a lot in the last couple of weeks, because they help us see students not as employers, sorry. They help us see students who are trying to figure out their major. We're trying to figure out what they want to do with the major that they have already selected. Ideally, it was like, I want to do this. And so I came to K-State to select a major in this particular area. But then maybe you hit a speed bump with a class that maybe was a little bit rougher than you thought, and you thought, well, I'm very passionate about this part, but maybe I need to try to rework what I'm thinking as to what I ultimately want to do. And so our peer specialists, career specialists will see students and try to give them options to say, this is what you can do also with a major in this kind of focus. And so as you do those kinds of things, it gives you an opportunity to see a little bit bigger and broader than what our scope was when we selected a particular career path that we thought that we were going to go on. And so experience means a lot. So we've been figuring out our next year already. Our programming is what we're doing. And so we've had the students in the room with us, and we have given them free rein to just say anything and everything. And so this summer, one of the things that we talked about was it probably would be a good thing to do maybe like a focus group with some of our students who utilize our services and have a good cross section to give input. So if you've served on a team like that, it may be for a day or a week or a couple of weeks or an hour or whatever. Be sure and put those kinds of things down, because it shows your expertise and the fact that you're willing to do those kinds of things. When people see that on your LinkedIn, they're more likely to tap you because they know that you have a level of comfort in serving in those kinds of ways. I am very, very, very involved, probably extremely involved in my civic engagement locally. I have been an elected official here in Manhattan, Kansas, serving on our school board. I am currently on our law board, which works with our local police department. And right now I'm on faculty senate. I'm the secretary of faculty senate. And I just think that it is important to give back to your community when you are able and you've got the time to do it. And so I am a stickler about being able to be a big contributor and being at the table when you're able to do that. I think that being at the table gives you an opportunity to give input when different perspectives need to be shared. And it gives you an opportunity to share that perspective. Especially as an African-American female, sometimes when people are doing things, they may not consider that because that might not be who they are sitting at the table, and they may forget about that perspective. There are lots of times I will also share with people that when you are doing certain things, another good way to network is to shadow. Shadowing offers a great opportunity to be able to see people in their space doing what they do best, and then figuring out how you could pick their brain and find out information about how would that look if I were to step in their shoes or to walk in part of their footprints. You don't really want to feel somebody else's shoes. You want to make your own pathway. But what would that look like for me? And so sometimes, here's one of my best tips that I will give about shadowing. I often will say to somebody, think about shadowing when you think about gender. Think about male and females. How males approach their workspace is very different than how females approach the same workspace. And so when you're shadowing, maybe shadow a male, shadow a female, and see how they approach that particular workspace, problem solving, emotionally, and that kind of thing. So when you do some networking, think in those terms as well, because people truly will approach a situation very differently depending on their perspective of that situation. And so that's a lot about experience, but that's just something to think about. And when I talk about networking with people, those are some of the things that I think about as well. So look at your skills and your expertise. It's almost like looking at your resume and saying, what of my resume do I want to take and sticky note on my LinkedIn profile so that other people can be connected to me as well. When you think about your skills, think about the things that are soft skills. Think about your skill sets. What is it that you've learned as a server? What are some of the things that you've learned and some of the classes that you've taken? What are some of the things that you have learned from, gosh, some of the volunteer work that you've done? And then look at those skill sets and think about what's unique to you. And then think about what overlaps, what other people can then say, oh my gosh, we have this in common. So-and-so has this in common with me. And I want you to think about those kinds of things and think about, I mean, upward of about 20 or so items of things that you've done that you would find that would be very common. And then think about your education. Don't forget, do not forget to include your education. Education is the one thread and the one fiber of your LinkedIn profile that will connect you to people like in education, in the medical field, and in other areas of your life that you have had some overlap. Let's see, be sure to include the location. You would be surprised how many people would say, oh my gosh, I'm from that part of the country too. I'm from Ohio. And I find lots of people who are from the Ohio, from the Buckeye State. I'm just going to go ahead and say it, from the Buckeye State and from Ohio. And it gives you a different sense of the Midwest culture and expectations of people a lot of times, and how you can network and connect with folk. So I want you to think about that. We talked a little bit about volunteer experience and causes. What do you stand for? What do you stand for? What is the cause that just burns within you and makes you feel like you are, it makes you stand out for who you are? So think about that. And then make sure that your profile, if that's something that you're comfortable sharing, make sure your cause is included in what it is that you are doing and what it is that you want to display. Okay. Okay, Victoria, you're from Ohio too. I see that in the chat. I see that. She's a Buckeye. I love it. And so keep that in mind. Just that simple. People say things like that, and then now we feel connected, because when I say a Buckeye, it's a little nut. And if you're connected to the Ohio State, for example, then people would know that that's the mascot. But yeah, there you go. So thank you for sharing that. And that's how it works. Just that simple. So then you feel like you've got a connection, and then that person will say, oh, I can connect to their LinkedIn profile because now I have something that overlaps our connectivity together for making connections. Let's talk a little bit about recommendations. Write recommendations to colleagues. If somebody get promoted, send them a little congrats. A lot of times things pop up kind of like, on other platforms, social media platforms, that'll say so-and-so just took a new job, or so-and-so is doing this, or they're changing jobs, or that kind of thing. Give them a shout out and a congrats, because that also will give you connectivity to that particular person for what it is. Do you have a mentor? Are you looking for a mentor? I have a person who actually is this is how small the world is sometimes. NACE is our national organization that we're a part of through the Career Center. And the national conference has been online the last couple of years because of COVID restrictions. And so when we were meeting in a breakout session, there was a time where you could ask for a mentee, or a mentor, or be a mentor, or ask for a mentee. And I volunteered to mentor someone, and lo and behold, they were from Ohio. And so it was like, oh my gosh. And the funny thing is, they are not that far from my hometown. And when you talk about the thousands of people that you could meet at a conference online, on Zoom, and this particular conference had about 600 people attending, but that particular breakout session was not that big, but it was huge. And think about that. That's a pin drop, literally, when we think about the pin drops on our phone, and when we talk about maps on a pin drop. And just, we put a couple things down about us. Of course, I'm in Kansas, they're in Ohio. They had absolutely no idea that I was from Ohio. And as we met for the very first time, that was the thing that brought us the biggest smile. It was the fact that they were not that far. And then they began to talk about their significant other, and they actually commute to the town that I grew up in where they work. And so look at that. There you go. You just never know. And so that is connectivity at its best for me. And when you talk about making connections and networking. And so I would have to say, our relationship has gone on, it will be a year this summer that we've been connected, because it started last summer when the conference happened last summer. So that's, you build relationships there, and you help people navigate things, or you help each other navigate, or you be a support in ways that you can support. And we've never been in the same space because our relationship has all been on Zoom. And so that's why I'm just a proponent of Zoom. Is really not that horrible. It makes some good opportunities when you can't get to the space that you are in with other people in the same room oftentimes. Let's see, connections. We talked a little bit about connections. Personalize your connect to people. Find out, and the reason why you want to personalize it, it helps people remember how they were connected to you also. As our networks grow and grow and grow, and then you got a list of 50 people and you're like, how do I know them? It's kind of like how I kind of cheat in my cell phone and kind of say, if they're connected to a certain situation, I will usually put that as the company. For me, it just makes it easier for me, because my family says I have way too many contacts as it is. And they're like, Mom, are you serious? Do you really know all those people? And I think, well, if you look at them and you see, I pretty much can tell you how I know them. So there was one the other day I came across, had a duplicate name, and I thought, oh, I don't remember how I met this person. So I felt kind of bad, but then I looked at the text message and then I realized what it was. So I think I do need to let go of a few people, just on a personal note, for my cell contacts. But anyway, connections. Let me just stop and talk a little bit about that. Do we have questions? I'm just chattering away here, Sarah. If anybody has questions, I open the chat and I can see it. But here's something. I'm gonna share a situation with you. I have a colleague that works here with me in the office, right 2 doors down, and they have been trying to help a person secure employment situation. So let's talk a little bit about networking from Pat's perspective on this. We have done some mock interviews and helped do some things with that particular person. And oh my gosh, they've got a rich resume of experience. And I think it is just the timing, because they're getting the interviews, but what's happening is they're like the finalists and they're not the one being selected. So how disappointing, just so disappointing. So I was sitting down doing this strategy little deal, and I said, let's just write some things down. Let's go back to the resume and find out, what are the causes that are common to what they're interested in? And we found the causes. So then I said, let's identify people in the Manhattan community who are connected to some of the same causes. So I started naming people. So my community involvement, I started just rattling off names, and I said, here's so-and-so, and this is what they do. Here's this person, and here's how they're connected to that. Here's so-and-so, and here's how they're connected to that. So right in a matter of 2 minutes, we had a list of 5 people. And they were like, oh my gosh, 5 people that now this person can either set up a lunch date with, dinner date with, or just a Zoom meeting if they don't want to go in the same room with them, or they can go in the same space with them because they're also in Manhattan. And from there, sometimes you lend your name and you say, you could use my name to do this, but ask permission, kind of like doing a reference, and just say, Sarah said that you would be a great person to connect with about this particular issue or concern. And from there, you have a conversation with someone. And that conversation then grows into connections. And the next thing you know, you've got a connection to them, kind of like my mentor from NACE. Here it was, we meet for the first time, we small talked, we talked a little bit about our interest in higher education, and that was our commonality, was our higher education connection. The other connection that we had was we helped students. So those are the two things that we had in common. We helped students and our higher education connection. And from there, we started small talking about other kinds of things that we were interested in and other kinds of things that we did within our community. I've been in the field longer than my mentee has. And so as we talked, it just grew and grew and grew. Same thing. So we've made these little circles pretty much, and we came up with 5 circles. And I said, here's the cause of a common thread of the tapestry that this person is interested in. Let's get them connected, and they can use my name to make those connections in the community, because I feel like my name is a positive connection here. And so that's our starting point. We haven't done it because we just met and did that. Today is Thursday. We just did that on Tuesday afternoon. And so that's one of the things that they're getting ready to do. Those are their next steps of networking. The other thing we talked about was, what are some of the things that they value? And as we talk about their values, we're saying, what are they good at? What are some of the things that they're really good at? What's standing out as some of the skill sets on their resume? That then we can say, how about we connect them with person A, B, and C in these departments on campus, because we know that as we look at, they talk about the great resignation, there's a great retirement going on here at K-State as well. We've got, yesterday there was a ceremony for faculty and professional staff where over 160 something people are going to retire this coming June, or have already retired from last fall until now. And so when you think about that kind of connectivity, these are people, as they said, of the people who were in attendance, there are so like over 4,000 or 5,000 years of rich service. When we talk about how many years people have been in their jobs at K-State. And so when you think about the longevity of people serving in certain spaces as a faculty or a staff member or an advisor, you think about all the people that they know. And again, as I use it as an example, when you think about the people that are in your own phone for contacts, that is a great start. And if they're there because of certain reasons, think about the overlap that you've got in your phone of all the contacts that you have. Now, you wouldn't want everybody to be on your LinkedIn contact, but some of them are just would be fabulous people to connect to. And so then you have to step outside of your comfort zone and reach out to people and not be afraid to say, this is what my interest is. This is what I need. What do you have that you could give me some advice on next steps or shadowing people? Or here's another one that we use a lot, informational interviewing. Informational interviewing, where you take a person that you have an interest in an area just from the perspective of what you know that they do, and you say, can I just talk to you? And basically you're picking their brain about, what do you do on a daily? What does your average day look like? What does this look like in the job of the description that it says that you have? What does that look like for you? Because what it looks like for Sarah is different than what it looks like for me, and vice versa. But think about that, because one of those will fit you a little bit different than it would fit another person. I hate to use the word fit, but your belonging will look different in those spaces. And so that's the other piece that you need to think about when you talk about connections. When you, what would help you belong better in a different space? So moving to the next thing, when we talk about connections, and you personalize things, find out the connectivity that you have. Just like I gave the example about the mentor from, had the Ohio connection. You would be surprised by the time you would talk to people, you're like, oh my God, I had no idea that that person is from, the same hometown as me, or just up the street, or we maybe have played sports in high school together or something of that. You just would never know how our world shrinks and how many degrees of separation they say, right? And so those degrees of separation is what makes a difference. And when you can find the commonality of the degrees of separation, sometimes it could be a family member, it could be a friend of a friend, and you're like, oh my gosh, that was my best friend so-and-so, relative or something like that. Connectivity. That's what networking is really all about. Groups. What groups can you join that will show meaning for you? What would show you some meaning? What would give you an edge that you may not have that is in your resume right now? So think about that. I'm not saying do a lot, as students and people pursuing a certain path, choose wisely because your time is very valuable and you don't want to spread yourself too thin. Again, remember when I used the example about doing some short-term commitments? Sometimes a short-term commitment brings a lot of richness and a lot of wealth to what it is that you've got. When my kids were in high school, my daughter, for example, I had her serve as a youth on our Parks and Rec advisory board for the city, because our young people were using our parks. They were trying to get more young people to use our parks and our recreation areas. And she had a great voice that she was not afraid to use. And so I said to her, here's an opportunity for you to put your voice and be a little bit of a spokesperson for youth in the community that are your age. Speak up and let the other adults know what other youth are wanting to do. The commitment level was that particular advisory board only met quarterly, so 4 times a year, unless they were working on a particular project. When she was there, they were doing a renovation, and so they met a little more frequently. But 4 times a year commitment is doable for most people. And when you think about it, or as I mentioned, focus groups, a focus group is another one that is a short-term commitment because they have a project that they're trying to accomplish. They'll say that the focus group may meet 1 to 3 or 4 times. The commitment is over, they'll write a report, they'll either ask for feedback or input, and then your commitment may be done, or they may reach out to you, months later to show you how the project ended up as a result of your feedback and your input. So look at short-term kind of commitments to network. The people that are also sitting on those boards are other professionals in so many vast areas. I mean, the cross-section of people that you would meet would be like, oh my gosh, that you would ordinarily not be in the same space and room with a lot of times. So think about those kinds of situations. And again, short-term commitments and connections with other groups are very, very rich and just make for a very positive situation for you. And think about the people whose business cards you'll collect, and then you can add them to your LinkedIn. So overall, when you look at profiles and things that you're doing, think about what it is and how you want to convey yourself, as well as thinking about what other people can share with you. I didn't talk about all the boards that I'm on, but a lot of the connections that I have are people from other boards that I've served on, or again, my community commitments that I've been involved in. And I'll tell you, when you do something like serve on a school board or faculty senate, they also don't tell you that sometimes the commitment level is a little bit longer and thinner than what they share. And sometimes you need to serve on other kinds of committees in order to keep that level of commitment going, because it's a little bit deeper when you do some other things. So when I talk about 4 times a year, find out if that means you have to serve on other committees. And in my case, when I was on the school board, I was also on the Parks and Rec Advisory Board because because of the collaboration with the school district, utilizing our young people and youth, utilizing our parks and recs for different events And so I served there where they built 2 extra gyms within our community to extend the gymnasium space that the community now uses. And so I was part of the decision making for that piece as well. So sometimes it has a little bit more in-depth involvement, but just find out. But you don't always have to volunteer for the extra part, but be on the board. So those are some of the things that I wanted to talk about today, as far as the LinkedIn quick tips and networking, and kind of the stuff that matters the most for having that connectivity. And I tell you what, again, just sitting there with that colleague talking about helping their significant move to the next steps, we sat down and identified 5 people immediately from 5 different areas within the community for them to be able to now touch base with. You know, you throw your pennies to the wind on 5, I bet you one of them is going to be a big difference maker for them. And so that's something to think about. So Sarah, that's kind of all I've got. If people have questions or want to ask other things.
Anybody have any questions?
I can put their quiet group.
I will say that in the past with in-person symposiums, we have had an opportunity for professional pictures. So, and we're hoping to have our next symposium in 2023 in person. So if we are able to do that, we would really like to have y'all participate in getting a professional photo taken that you can use on LinkedIn or any other professional communications. So that's always a good thing to have.
Yeah.
I see there's a question.
Hi, my name is Dorothea Summers. So I remember one time we went to like this conference, like some of my friends and I, and one of my friends got a card from somebody, and the person told them, the professional basically was like, oh yeah, just message me or email me, and if and then we can talk about working something out, like maybe you can work for me or whatever. Anyway, and I remember this girl like agonizing over like, when should I email them? She was like, if I email right after, is that too soon? Like, what maybe if I do it too late, they won't remember me. And I was wondering, like, when is like the perfect time to like email them back, essentially, like, hey, remember we met up at the thing? You know what I mean? You don't want to do it like 5 minutes after, obviously, but I just didn't know like when was appropriate.
That's an excellent question, Dorothea. Can I tell you a story?
Sure.
I got one of the regents here in the union. They were here for a meeting, and I was thanking them because there was something big that had just happened, that we had just selected the new president for the university. That's what it was. And I was just thanking them for a good job that I thought that they had done with their forums and that kind of stuff. And one of the regents handed me their card, and I was there in the union at a conference. And so I stuck it in my in my little card holder and forgot to send a message to say thank you right away. And so what I did was I did a point of reference, and I said, hi, Regent so-and-so. I met you, you gave me your card in the K-State Student Union. I gave an approximate date so that they had a point of reference as to why they were in the space, that we were in the same space. And I just kind of opened up and said, it was so nice to meet you, and I appreciated you handing me your card as a reference for later, or whatever I said. You see what I mean? So I didn't do it right away because I was at a conference myself, and I just got by me, and I thought, oh my gosh, it's been a couple days. So you know what? If you give a point of reference as to when you met them and where it was, I think it helps them remember the space where they handed their card out, because I'm sure sometimes people hand out lots of cards. And then say something about yourself too. I was a student, da 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 da, or maybe you didn't get to even say anything about yourself, but then that's your time to be able to open up and share information about yourself as well. Good question. Excellent question.
Okay, thank you.
Everybody is kind of quiet today, huh? It's right after lunch.
I understand. Cameras off, eat.
I think I have another question. So like, I think it's happened like once or twice in the past where somebody's asked me to contact them, but
Mhm.
then for, you're busy at the time and like things kind of like you didn't write it down when you should have written it down or whatever. How late is like too late to contact somebody? Or like if you forgot about them for like a month or whatever, and then you're like, oh my gosh, I was supposed to contact them. Like, what do you say? Or should you like reach back out or something? Or how does that work?
I would, because I think that the contact is most valuable to you when you then need them for what it is that they told you to contact them for. Maybe it was the middle of midterms and you were just overwhelmed with studying and doing some other things. And you know what? Airspace has we say sometimes COVID fog or whatever, it has just overtaken us in a way that things do not look as perfect as they used to be. So I'm going to say, give yourself a lot of grace, Dorothea. It is okay. You've got the contact card. It's not like it expired, like a coupon. You know what I mean? And so again, make the reference of where you met them, because that may help them remember you. And you may even just say, I put this aside and totally forgot about it or something like that. And just being transparent and open about it. I bet they have too. I bet we all do. We all do. So yeah, don't be hard on yourself about it. And then you turn it around and say, and I thought this was really probably a better time to contact you about what it was I wanted to ask about or what I needed right now. And then make your point of reference as to what it is that you think that they may be able to extend for you or extend an opportunity for you on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Don't be, they don't expire. So it may be a year from now and you're about to graduate. You're like, oh my gosh, this person's card, this might help me make my next connection for something. I'd reach out. But giving them a point of reference, and even if it says, this was a few months ago and I didn't get around to doing it, and now I'm at a point where I'm feeling like I need some, either encouragement or whatever the reason that you're reaching out to them, or you had mentioned to reach out and I still wanted to take that opportunity to do it. I think people appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you for your questions.
Thank you.
I feel
I
like
have a
that's,
question.
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Are you sure? I didn't want to interrupt you. Okay. So I had a question kind of regarding resumes. So obviously I'm in the process of, building my resume as I'm going through college and stuff. And I want to include all of the work experience I've gotten over the past few years that are relevant to, environmental jobs, which I'm really wanting to get into. But I obviously don't want my resume to be too long and, take up several pages. So how is it okay, do you think, to have a couple pages for, like if the work experience kind of takes up a majority of the page and then you have other
Experiences.
Yeah, stuff like that. What's the usual, range of pages for a resume, I guess is kind of what I'm asking.
So Courtney, are you applying for something?
Not yet, but in the future when I am applying and I want to have all of the relevant work experience for my future job, I guess.
Okay. So here's the first thing I'm going to say is, a lot of times we like to see what the job description is that you are focusing on, to make sure that you've got a right number of keywords that then are prompting to be seen by that particular field or industry. Number one. Number two, people are stuck on, got to have a one-page resume, but sometimes a one-page resume does not cover it all. And I realize that, and some people won't look at anything over one page. Shame on them, because sometimes people's experiences are very rich and very vast. Another tip that I could give you is sometimes a mention of an experience without having the bullet points under it that describes it is better than not having the experience on there at all. Does that make sense? Where you say the title of what you did, the business where you worked, and you've got the dates. That is, but remember, they're talking points. So then someone can then probe and say, Courtney, tell me a little bit more about this particular experience that you didn't elaborate on, because at least it mentions it. You know what I mean? And then it's there for a talking point. And then if it pertains to what it is that that person does, they can relate to it anyway. They wouldn't need a big explanation of all the bullet points of what happened or what you did. Does that make sense too?
Yeah. Thank you so much. I just, sometimes people are very particular about resumes. So
Yes, they are. And you know what? That speaks to a culture of things to think about when you go into a workplace of places. If they're that particular about not wanting to see anything over a page, what other things kind of spill over in the workplace in those kinds of same situations? Just saying.
thank you.
Sometimes it can be helpful, sometimes it could be a hindrance. If it doesn't work with your personality and the culture of what it is that you're looking for in a workspace. You know what I mean? That's been kind of a situation that we've tried to help students be able to navigate, which is very tough. And that is workplace culture. Great question, by the way. I'm loving your questions.
We just have a few minutes left. Does anybody,
So Dorothea has something about a long CV. You want to elaborate? Like, do you have a long CV or are you looking? Oh, there, okay.
Oh, sorry. When you were talking about like when she asked about like a short resume, I was like, oh, well, like if you are applying something educational, it'd be like a really long CV.
Oh, okay. Yep. Because a lot of times your CV, which is a curriculum vitae, will talk about the coursework that you've had and your involvement in coursework, as well as some other things as well. So yes. So sometimes in the field, in the medical and other fields, they will ask for a CV and a personal statement. And so it needs to be more than one page anyway, usually. So great input.
So when we're giving like our elevator speech, like if we happen to run into somebody, and you said it's like about 30 seconds. So you had a small section in your elevator speech about giving back to the community, right? About how like I like doing these things, so like giving back to the community. Is there anything else like, sorry, it might be kind of a broad question, but like, there's something else like you would also say, like besides giving back to the community? I don't know, like something else that like, you're like, I'm also doing this because, I don't know.
Well, when you do it, it should be quick and concise in about 30 seconds is what they say. Hi, my name is Dorothea Summers. I am really, I love blah, blah, blah. But remember, think about what it is that you're saying and why is it that you're saying it to them too. You know what I mean? If it's somebody that you're trying to make a connection to as far as next steps, it may be more important to talk about the degree that you're pursuing and what your passion is as far as your field of study versus, you may not have time to talk about the free clinic or something like that. You know what I mean? So think about when you say it, but practice a couple of things that you just kind of roll out and say automatically.
Oh, so like a couple of things like that you could like tailor to each person.
You could, but you got to think quick on your feet anyway. You know what I mean?
Oh dear. Okay.
But have one or two things. And so I was helping a person actually with a mock interview the other day. And they said to me, I always struggle with the question, tell me a little bit about yourself. And that was what I was saying to them. I said, tailor it kind of like your elevator speech where you don't go on and on and on, because then you're going to not ruin, but take away from the future questions that they're going to probably ask you in the interview anyway. Hit it and quit it. Say something about yourself. Keep it simple. Don't get real, you know what I mean? I mean, they obviously know your name from your resume and they know your degree, but it doesn't hurt to reiterate your degree and maybe your minor or a major or an interest that you did, you know, and then talk and say one or two other quick little things about yourself, and then let them probe sometimes.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm glad you said that we should practice it, because like I'm a senior already and I'm going to graduate, but like I feel like we've been asked so many times, tell us about yourself. And like every time I immediately forget everything about myself.
Yes,
I'm like, actually,
nervous.
I'm like, actually, I don't know anything about myself. Like, I don't know what I'm, yeah. So yeah, I guess that would have been good to know.
Resume. Stick to your resume, stick to the things on your resume, because you don't need to get into, I'm the first, I'm the oldest, I'm the youngest, I got, you know, you don't need to get into those kinds of things with people. Talk about the professional piece and stick with that. And stick with the things on your resume that you want them to know about you quickly. I'm pursuing a degree in this because of my interest in this area. Boom. Does that help?
Yeah, that's really helpful for sure. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Victoria, you got to tell me where you're from in Ohio before you get off.
I was born in Dover.
Dover. I don't know that. So what is it close to?
Do you know New Philadelphia?
Oh, so you're up in the north.
Dover, New Philly area. Yeah.
Okay. New
It's
Philly.
like an hour away from Akron.
Yes, I was going to say, okay, so I'll tell you a little story. See, I can connect to you there. When I was in high school many years ago, I was in marching band. And so we would go to competitions in some of the smaller towns around Ohio. So boom, there you go. So see about connectivity like that? Even if you have to dig back, you know.
Did you go to Ohio State?
No, actually, I went to University of Cincinnati because I wanted to get further away from home because I'm from the Cleveland area.
Oh.
Yep. And just outside of Cleveland, in East Cleveland and Mentor on the Lake, Mentor Kirkland area. And so would do stuff in Ohio, but then I did stuff in the Mansfield area because of sports in high school that I was involved in. So there you go. You see what I mean? And so Akron is right there. Outside of Akron, you know, I've got family that lives there now. Actually, all my family's in Ohio still, pretty much, except for me. So yay, thanks for sharing that.
All righty, well, I think we're out of time. So I want to thank you, Pat, for presenting to us today. And I think we had some good questions. Yes. And thank you to everybody else for participating, and enjoy the lovely sunshine we have today.
Yes, it is nice out. Go do something, even if it's 5 minutes of fresh air.
Yep. Thank you.
All righty. Bye-bye, Sarah.
Bye.